Hey guys, this will be video 2 for the, let me make certain I get this right, the 1981 Gibson E2 CMT. This is the 7th guitar made of 1981, which means that would have been the first day stamping of the Gibson E2. So go to video 1 a few weeks back if you want to see the rarity of this neck and what it is that we have. And that is exactly all we have, is just the neck. And this is, and I cover this in extensive detail about the serial number and how to trace that and all that jazz in video 1. But Eric, this guitar is for the guy that I built the 69 SG, restored that 69 SG. So I've already covered that in video 1. But with this video, we were waiting on some vintage parts to come in as Eric was collecting everything. I'm going to discuss that a little bit, but I'll just cover it briefly on the front end in the event I get busy and forget. But we've got some extremely rare dirty finger zebras here that have the double conductors. They're not the 4 conductor wires, but each individual. I wasn't going to start talking about that, so let me just stop. Those are pretty rare, so stick around and you'll see that rather than having just a single wire coming out where they're already wired in series, basically it's 2 wires coming off of each individual coil. So you would be looking at a parallel. They would be coming off in parallel. And then we're going to be doing coils, either coil splitting or series. Series is your traditional pickup. And then you can go into coil splitting and running them in parallel. So we've got to determine exactly what it is Eric wants, but I'm probably going to be encouraging him to allow me to run it in either a series, which is the traditional pickup, or parallel, rather than series, which is the traditional pickup, and coil splitting, where you kill one of the lugs or one of the coils. So we'll get there. We got plenty of time, but these are some extremely rare pickups. And they, judging from the magnet, they're pretty strong magnets, so they're probably going to be some pretty hot pickups. And also, in other words, what I'm discussing here is the reason I haven't done a video, because Eric had to get all his vintage stuff together, and there's your vintage 1970s, 80s TP6. The fine tuner design. I've never seen anybody fold one open like that to see how it functions, but absolutely brilliant. So it's really cool. So I look forward to working with that. And I'm glad I'm just going off the cuff here, because I know I probably will forget this once I start talking about the structural aspects related to building the body. Several weeks back, I couldn't believe I found these, but there's a guy selling these. These are actual vintage, they're brass posts per the 70s and 80s specs, but they're in the zinc, the steel with the zinc plated base, bushings. I never can think what those things are called. So insane. Couldn't believe I found those. So Eric, and I haven't even told you about that, Eric, but those are pretty darn cool. Those will be vintage, correct? And the guy's got some more, so I'm probably going to buy some more of them, and just for my own personal stock. But once it goes back together from the bridge, that'll be vintage, correct? And then I never get to talk about some of this stuff. So once you're pressing this bushing into the body, you'll have your ground wire down in the body, where this will slide down and ground out next to the soldered or soldered tinned wire, and then therefore your ground wire is internal and everything's real nice and clean. So that's how that will be getting grounded. I'm not going to start this video over in case I get too long-winded, because some of this stuff is so critical that I think it's better to just look at the table and go off the cuff. Because if I get too long-winded and then do video 2 or 3 and then I forget to talk about that, that'll be a grave injustice to Eric, because I haven't even told Eric that I had those. Or maybe I did. But back to the pickups. Let me just pull one of these out very quickly so I don't throw anybody a curveball here because I'll shoot straight with you. I had never seen these before. I might have heard somebody talking about it, but didn't know what it was. But when Eric showed it to me, it was like, holy cow, where do you find this stuff, man? This is awesome. And then come to find out, I think his uncle owned a music store back in the 70s and 80s, maybe probably up in Massachusetts. So that's about the coolest thing I've ever seen, man. So anyway, and also, Eric, rather than this black electrician's tape here, I have some actual mesh electrician's tape. If you prefer, since these are going to be they're a non-covered pickup, I could rewrap those with a actual electrician's mesh tape, but we'll get there in the future. Last thing I want to do is start tearing on this and screw up some wiring. So we'll talk about that. But I do have that if you want to change that over to a mesh tape. So very cool, and see that will allow us to work. See right now I'm looking at that. That's parallel. But if you connect them, ground out back here somewhere and then just connect them to the lug on a traditional lug, which would be going into that lug right there. If you ran both of them into that same lug and then soldered them together, now you're running it in traditional series. But if you're doing a push-pull, then you can run these babies separate and either do series, parallel, or either series and coil splitting. I don't know if they make a 3-position push-pull, like a push, middle, pull, or something like that. I don't know about where you could do the 3 different wiring, but we've got some ways to go there. However, I say that to say this. If you don't mind, Eric, if you'll take some time and do a little bit of research for me, man, that would so help me so that you've kind of processed through maybe what it is you even want. I'm going to try to encourage you to go with either traditional series or parallel. But if you were really shooting for a split coil, then I need to know that so I don't overstep my boundaries. But I know enough about doing this series, parallel, and splitting, where I was using the 3-position double pull, double throw switches for each individual pickup, which I know you guys are aware of that. The series, which is traditional pickup, once I went to parallel, it was just ethereal bliss. It sounded incredible. I never really cared for splitting all the way down unless I was building like a hybrid Telecaster, where I've got this in a Telecaster bridge position and I need to truly split down to authenticate my Telecaster sound, or Strat, if I wanted 2 single coils. So anyway, if you will, Eric, just kind of let me know what you're thinking, and kind of and if you don't know, then we'll figure it out together. But if there's a wiring diagram out there that you prefer me to work by, just let me know. I think there's another. Oh yeah, there's a. Yeah, and then this whole Shaler box houses a brand new bridge that will be per the actual 1981 specifications, where you have the small bushings. So it'll truly be per 1981 specs, and that will be a very, very precise design. It's really cool. It's got the little S on the back. I'm glad to see that. And as far as the gold goes, man, it's really beautiful, really, really beautiful. And we'll talk about doing a little bit of relic work on that in the future, but it's really just going to come down to me doing some a light brushing and very, very gentle relic work. I don't want to do anything really extreme, because this is actually this is in really great shape. It doesn't have any major it really doesn't have any oxidation on it at all. It's just ever so slightly. Those are very precise. Okay, so what can I say? I got a pretty cool job. Get to tinker with this cool vintage stuff that everybody else pays for. What more could you ask for? Because I saw one of these on eBay, and it was actually gold, and I think they were asking $395 for it, or either it was like buy it now or don't buy it at $395. So 300 here, 400 here, 200 there, 100, 150 there. Next thing you know, you got a multi-$1,000 guitar. but it'll actually be worth that as well. And there's the gold knobs in here as well that he provided. So I haven't even looked at those and have no intention in it, so I'll just leave those in the bottom. But with that said, I can get those off the table. And before I forget, I I had mentioned that I'm going to show the guitar that your buddy might be interested in me building out for him. This will be the guitar, and it's the Black Explorer. But I'm going to show this at the end of the video, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about his options. I've got this one as well as a black limbo that I would sell. And the black guitar I just showed you, I had it strung up about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and was playing it acoustically. But let me stop. But I will talk about that before the video ends. And if I don't talk about it in this video, I will be happy to work with you. I think your name is Ed, or either I'll work it into the video series here. Because as I clarified in video 1, this is not a how to build a guitar video. This video series is strictly for Eric to see the progress of the guitar and allow me to talk about design, layout, fitment, and stuff like that. You guys can gather a lot of information from it, but I'm not going to be talking too much about how I did certain things, other than I'm going to contradict what I just said, because I saw an incredible opportunity to do a video here, and you can just read between the lines and you can see how easy it is to achieve some really precise work just by a little bit of cowboy ingenuity. Was it ingenuity? Is that the word? So 2 degree slope right there. Let me turn this around. That'll throw you off. This is for the 70s Les Paul, the 2 Les Paul that I restored recently, but that short 1 1/2 inch wide tenon. So I just did that final route work, and I've sent some pictures to the client, but what I'm going to do is kind of talk about my process by how I did this to guarantee once I start rebuilding this heel on this neck, which got this obviously was the 81, it would have had some sort of tenon on it. And I'm looking at the tenon through the shadow work here, and it's not that design, but it's kind of irrelevant once it all epoxies together or either glues together with a tight bond. However, as I had mentioned to Eric, everything about the way I build this back, it's going to be per 58 specs is to me favorable, because I've already got the 58 templates, and it makes more sense to me to do it that way. Okay. So let's talk about building the guitar, or either putting one back together, because I did not want to do any of this work. Actually, the only work I did, because I knew Eric was sourcing an actual vintage correct pickguard. This is the whole reason I'm doing this video 3 weeks later, is because Eric and I both agreed, hey, I felt pretty confident that this was true enough to work from, and I had offered to actually machine the actual pickguard, but he and I both agreed, well, let's just, if we're going to really take it back to a vintage correct guitar, let's just buy a pickguard, bite the bullet, spend a little bit too much money on a pickguard for what they normally would be worth. But however, if that pickguard produces a certain pitch, and I'm exaggerating, that changes what I would have originally machined, then let's use this as an initial guide, but then let's put it to the side, and let's wait till we get this in hand, and then build the whole guitar. I got to get my straight edge. I can find it. Good chance for that. Good luck finding it, I should say. The shop's a mess. I mean, it's like a dust bowl in here. But basically, with this in hand and pickup rings in hand per vintage specs to start with, whether we finish with that or not, and Eric will understand why I'm bringing this up, I always start with the vintage correct stuff. I find the center line of that. I find the center line of that. I verify that they are true, and they are true. so that this pickup ring, regardless of whether there's a 1/4 inch gap or no gap on either side, I'm building this guitar footprint. The guitar footprint is truly going to be defined by this angle here, this angle here, this point here, but most critically based on the center line, which is the center line of the neck. That's kind of a given. So with that said, I went ahead and did all of the initial machine work for the body pretty darn close to this guitar, especially the upper footprint and off the center line. But I left this Honduran mahogany about a 1/2 inch, if not probably 5/8 of an inch longer here, about an 1/8 of an inch wider here, and it was at least an 1/8 of an inch wider down here. So it was this really fat kind of. It looked deformed in relation to the body. So that's one of the primary reasons I didn't want to do any videos, because visually it was really odd. It was so odd looking, I had to just get it out of the room and stop looking at it, because I was so tempted as we were waiting on the vintage parts to come in to kind of like get a little bit closer so I could do a video. But I literally, honest to God, just had to flip the lights off in the shop and just let it sit and wait until we had this baby in. And Eric knows I'm not complaining. Eric and I both agreed it may be a week or two, 2 or 3 weeks later, but man, it will be so worth it to make certain that once we build this guitar, it won't be per a set of drawings that might have been drawn and claimed it was a 1976, but it was based on a 1994 or a 2001 pick guard that nobody would really know that it really wasn't an 81 or a 76, et cetera, et cetera. So it was worth the wait to discover that in all actuality, we would have been okay. Okay, so you might be thinking, shit, man, well, that sucks. We lost 3 weeks. No, we didn't. We guaranteed that, and I'm not saying Eric to say that, but if you're building a guitar like this and you're truly putting that $400 bridge on there, that, you know what I'm saying, or maybe you've got a set of dirty fingers like that are probably worth $400 to $500. I don't know, maybe more. I have no idea what those are worth. I know they're worth a lot more than most pickups. But when you start putting parts like that on a body, you want that body to be true. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, everybody knows that, but are you willing to wait, 3 weeks to make certain that, we probably would have been okay with the pick guard from that, but nonetheless, this was a good wait. I'll only throw it under the bus briefly. We do have a problem right here where, I got to talk about this if I can find let me pause briefly. Okay, when you open up the box and you pull this pick guard out, in case I forget, I don't think I'll forget this, but the whole thing about the Explorer is this is the most unforgiving guitar design you will ever build. Because like if you're building a Strat or a Tele or something like even a Les Paul, they don't really have the pick guard. That's a poor example. But the Telecaster and the Stratocaster is a perfect example. You've got all these compound radius curves where you can fudge things a little bit if it needs to curve a little bit more or a little bit less, et cetera, et cetera. But the whole thing about building an Explorer or a Flying V is everything is so, I guess the word would be just, I think, I'm just going to call it like trapezoidal. Everything is either straight lines, very square lines, or some sort of very precise angle. It's just the angles themselves are so unforgiving, and everything is based on that center line. So once you've defined that center line based on the pick guard you have in hand, you are not going to be moving this up or down any amount at all. You might be moving forward a little bit or back off the center line, but once you start moving an item that is on that pitch, this is so hard to hold. once you start moving an item that is on that pitch, it kind of compounds what's going on. See how quickly you get off the guitar just by moving, man, just an eighth of an inch. So I say all that to say this. That's what I mentioned. That's why I mentioned I'm going to start out building this guitar using my vintage pickup surrounds, because I'm running into some issues with the gold metal rings that you sent, Eric. I'm not 100% certain that I would be able to use them, because when I first started doing my pre-prep work to machine out this body per this pick guard, these gold rings, these metal rings, it produces a completely different guitar. It pushes everything back almost a full solid 16th of an inch, and it definitely pushes it down a 16th of an inch. And I drew it on the body, the what I would call the modified version, and it ain't the same guitar. I could visually see it before I did all this machine work, to build the actual 1981. So this is an authentic 1981 based on period correct pickup rings, period correct pick guard, and then if you wanted to use a custom pickup ring, well, then that custom pickup ring would have to modify your pick guard. And you'd have to cut down into the pick guard here, not necessarily on the widths, because it's kind of strange. This guitar is designed, it has a little bit of a gap between each pickup ring, which I hate, but there's just nothing I can do about that, because when I build my guitars, I use a 1/8 inch radius bit right here, and my pickup rings actually are precise. They're very, very precise, and the distance between the bridge pickup and the neck pickup, there are no gaps on either the vertical or the horizontal. But with the 81, probably the 76 as well, there's no gap on the horizontal, the bottom line here and the bottom line there, but there's like not an eighth inch. It's a little bit over a 16th of an inch gap between each pickup ring. And I didn't want to start fudging the design, trying to, push everything together, because if you start pushing together here, now you push that horn forward. Or if I did that and then pushed this up against that in order to try to tighten everything up, now I've got the bridge pickup a solid 1/4 of an inch too far away from the bridge because of the scale, and therein lies the dilemma of, well, it's a 1981 pick guard and it's designed to have a gap between it, but we're about to put a golden honey amber lemon yellow top under it that is going to reveal itself between those two rings, whether that ring is gold or whether that ring is black. It's going to reveal itself. Is that a mistake? No, that's a historically accurate design for that guitar. And this being the 7th guitar that was ever made in that design, that's exactly how it would have looked, because this would have been the tobacco burst guitar. Okay, so again, as you can see, there's a whole lot of considerations when you're doing design work, and you might be tempted to try to tighten up the lug nuts on it, but if you do that, then you won't ever get the wheels off. So there's things that you have to bridle yourself when you're doing like a restoration. Okay, so with that said, now I can start talking about the actual, I completely lost my train of thought. I know I was talking about the body and the center line, so I'll just stay on point talking about the importance of, I don't really have to rehash that because that ought to make perfect sense. You're working, I couldn't do any body shape. I'm not complaining. I'm just, Eric and I are both on the same page that we didn't want to do anything until we had this in hand. But then once I had this in hand, this is where I was. That's why I paused a while ago. When you pull this out of the box, and I did not lose my train of thought, I did get back on track. This is what I was wanting to talk about. When I pulled this out of the box, the first thing I did was just look at it And immediately, because I pretty much have a calibrated eye, I saw it was kind of bangered up right here a little bit, but I didn't think a whole lot about it once I was looking at the pictures, other than I saw this back here looked to be original. That definitely looked to be original. That line and that line, probably, if anything's going to be bangered with, it's going to be down in this, or it's going to be in this corner right here or that corner right there. Well, I say that to say this. Let me pause. I got to find the other straight edge. Okay, so what I discovered, going straight to the finish line, we're perfectly square right here. We're perfectly square right here in relation to this outside line, but we lose squareness right here in that that would have been the factory point right there, but it got, I'm exaggerating, it got bangered and sanded, cut in on an angle like that. And then once it got cut in on an angle like that, it also caused this line right here to remain 90 degrees with the new cut. And unfortunately, because of it being exponential, if you move in 32nd of an inch right here, it gets exponential the further out you measure it. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, it's only the width of the pickup ring. Well, it is bangered up enough that you have to put the pickup ring at the end of the fretboard, which is square in relation to the center line. This is where I'm talking about the unforgiveness of the Explorer design. So unforgiving. Since this is off, it's gapping down here, and you might think, who cares? Nobody's ever going to see that. Well, me as a perfectionist, yeah, you have to care about those things, or at a minimum, at least reveal it. And I'm not saying there's a solution just yet, because even Eric and I both agreed, hey, there's a possibility we're not even going to put this pick guard on this guitar, but we just wanted to make certain that we bought this pick guard in order to get this body footprint historically accurate. And then whether we use this pick guard or actually install it or just use it for design and layout, and then he gets another vintage correct pick guard that has not been bangered up in this corner, that's totally his call. Or either we just leave the pick guard off the guitar entirely, which I don't want to do that because I think it would look way, way too bland and empty. However, we're definitely making some, we're not there yet, we'll put it that way. But I do know that once I picked it up and was just looking at it going, okay, it looks really good. And then I noticed there was some cowboy work here. And then when I started sighting down this line right here, it's very, very noticeable. I don't think you might be able to see it. I'll try to, it doesn't matter. That's the reason I got this right here. So you have to cut the corner out there because of the radius. It's hard to do this crap on camera. It's way over a 16th. It's probably man, it might be 3/32 inch. It's considerable. So with that said, if you have to put the neck pickup and the bridge pickup perfectly on center and true with the end of the fretboard, then that little bit of a gap is going to reveal itself pretty bad. Again, I've covered that enough just so, and Eric may even have been aware of that, and he might have thought, I'm okay with it. As long as we got this thing to guarantee that we got that horn, then I'm cool with it. So I'm going to stop talking about that because I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining, but it's just revealing. It just revealed some things that I needed to present in a video, but not until I was ready to do the video. And with that said, let's talk about backing up from this jig, and then I'll just show you guys how you could guarantee that you're building the body true, so that then you can start building the neck to fit the body, yet everything go together per specs. Okay, that ought to be kind of a given. And I'm trying to do the best I can for this to be somewhat interesting for the viewing audience, but primarily for the client to see that. And Eric knows me enough that he knows this neck is going to be perfectly true and on the center line with this body. But unless you build these jigs and assure yourself that you're doing all this setup before you route that on a 2-degree slope, it's got to be true. And if it's not true, well, if it's not true, then you're best to just epoxy everything in on center line and let there be some gaps in there. And I say that with a lot of caution. And if anything, just erase that I said that. Do it right. Make certain you're on center. And if you don't achieve center, back up, punt, and figure out what you need to do to achieve center. Even if it comes down to gluing some maple shims, on one side where you might have messed it up or something like that. Okay, but do it right the first time, and it's far more enjoyable of a job. And this jig, I've got several of these routing jigs. I've got 2-degree, 3-degree, and then I've got my 4-degree. And then I built another one per the last 2 Les Pauls that I restored. They were 4.27 degrees or something like that, which is a pretty steep pitch. So this being the 2-degree pitch yields basically, make sure I don't misquote because I get too many numbers in my head. 8, 10, 11, 11/16. Okay, it yields an 11/16 inch height at the bridge location, and I'm talking about the bottom of the EAD, the bottom of the D and the G string on this guitar. You want it to be a minimum of 11/16 of an inch height once the guitar is built and that string is sitting there with the proper action. You want it to be a minimum of 11/16 of an inch off the top. This one's going to be just ever so slightly more because it is going to have the likelihood of a pick guard on it, and you'd be surprised. Well, those pick guards are pretty substantial in thickness, and you wouldn't want this bridge to be back here hovering at 9/16 of an inch or a half inch before you put the pick guard down, because once you put the pick guard down, man, your action is going to feel way, way too low. So just like the way we built the SG and the Explorer replicas, or the Explorer itself, the Flying V, and all that stuff, those guitars don't have very low bridges. They're pretty high, closer to 19 to 20 millimeters, which is getting closer to almost 3/4 of an inch. So this one will be getting just ever so slightly closer to 3/4 of an inch. And why am I discussing that? Because it determined which jig that I picked up and put on here to do the final tapering on the bottom. Because when I had the guitar, the footprint and everything lined out, all the machine work, I used this Stuart McDonald Les Paul jig, routing jig. You can see this is the jig design as you're building a Les Paul. This is where you're doing your internal route work or any of your critical center line work, because you've got a score line back here on the back side of this jig and you even have most of you guys already know this. You already have your bridge location and your tailpiece stud locations, bottom and the top. You have a centerline score, and then here's your wiring harness channel, your 3-way selector channel, and obviously your controls channel. But most importantly, you have your true Les Paul tenon, which be willing to bet be his guitar. Okay, so you see how precise we are, or I am. When you've got that right there, I don't know if it'll go all the way up in it. Oh wow, this will be cool. I'm telling you, I did not plan this, but this will be a great way to show the reasoning behind why I built it the way I built it. Because whether this is a Les Paul or an Explorer or a Flying V, I want my tenon to end in the same position. If I have a 16th fret guitar, if I have the neck joining the body at the 16th fret, well, then it's just going to be a longer tenon. But it's going to be the same tenon as far as where it stops in relation to the scale of the guitar. Why? Because also the location of within the actual pickup, the neck pickup. See, catch my drift? And how do I know that? Because when I connect the bridge location per the top template to the bottom template, looks like a Les Paul to me. But who's to say, what does it matter what's going on with this outside footprint? It doesn't. So that's why that jig, that location is initially, I find that location first by using this template, and then I just machine it with a flat bottom. But I only machine it deep enough to define it so that I can get this block up in the body. Now you're going to start seeing my reasoning. And I'm spending a little bit more time talking like how to here, but just also to let you guys know how damn particular I am about doing precise work. So basically you started out with just this traditional flat bottom, and then once you have that flat bottom, in order to get this jig temporarily glued down atop some tape, then I put this tongue or tenon in here. And then, as I jokingly say, I'd be willing to bet you Eric's guitar, once I put the tape down on the body, and then I put the masking tape on the back side of this pitch jig, then once I jet glue those or CA glue those together, when I drop this down, I know for a fact that I push it all the way up to that, and it's just going to automatically line up my routing jig with that. Then I remove that, then I come in with that bit, make one pass, and when I say one pass, literally within 15 seconds, I've cranked up the router bit, moved in here, moved out, then hit the middle, clean it up one more time, walk away, and she's finished and ready to do a video. And so now that you see the process, you see it's just poplar. So, anyway, there you have it. So, and that's what you can expect. If you clamp these, it will cause the glue. I did escape a little bit right there. But if you clamp these, it will force that glue to actually go through the tape and can contaminate your top. So let's say you were working on a extremely valuable guitar or something that you didn't need to make a mistake. Proceed with incredible caution about where you put your jet glue, because sometimes it'll come through. Now the solution there is to just hit that with a little bit of mineral spirits, and all it is tape residue. But this one's a different story right here. It's going to require that I shave that off a little bit. So, but the cool thing about it is it's going to be getting a 1/4 inch thick top, maple top. But I just want you guys to see the engineering behind all the channel work that was done. So let's talk about that now. Let's get the table cleaned up a little bit, and just take a view. It's just some poplar. But I will say this: you might think, it's just some boards glued together. Well, they're glued together so precise that I was able to lay this atop a flat surface and put a straight edge on it that went out a good 18 to 24 inches. And I was able to measure down the exact distance from this point out to that point. And on both sides, what I'm getting at here, you got to make certain that you've got your roll under control. In other words, you do not want roll. You want it to be perfectly true, but on that pitch. And then the way you verify your jig is you put a straight edge up here, and you come out here on the flat surface and you measure down 54 millimeter or 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 2 1/4, whatever you measure over here. You have to make certain that it's identical over here on a flat surface. Now, if you achieve that, And I would say within a millimeter or within a half a 30 second, don't go there. Make certain that they're exact. This one is incredibly precise, so that once I glue that down, based on that tenon defining everything, then I know I'm true. So I'm perfectly on center. I have my roll, pitch, and yaw. Everything about, in other words, the center line is the yaw. The pitch defined by that angle there, 2 degrees, and then the roll is defined by having a clean flat bottom. Okay, and then once you build this, you'll never have to build it again. Set it over the side until you get another project, and then do a video and go from there. Okay, very nice. And the beauty of the work, see how precise it is. That's what you want to shoot for when you're building a guitar, or building an airplane, or building a choo-choo train set. Anything you're doing, you want to achieve that type of work. It's really beautiful. Okay, so I don't need that anymore. So let me pause, clean the table up, and we'll go from there. Okay, there's a ton of stuff I could talk about with regards to the build, but it's just that's why I'll have to do so many more future videos. This gives you an idea of how much bigger the initial build is, starting from like a 58. A 58 is considerably bigger, primarily in its length. That's even a little bit bigger than a 58. But the whole idea about this build right here is we knew we were going to be going with solid curly maple top. Whether that top was, 40 thousandths veneer, which I don't do that type work, but it's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you had a 1.5 inch thick body and you wanted to do a really pretty curly maple top, then you could buy the curly maple veneer. It's fairly expensive, but then you could just veneer the top. But Eric and I both agreed, man, we wanted the actual tap tones of a solid maple top, a solid Honduran mahogany bottom for the absolute optimum strength. And I don't know what they were doing in the 70s, but I'd be willing to just about bet you one of my tools over there, it was probably just a fairly thin veneer, because this board right here is one solid piece. There's no glue join, and you can't afford to build guitars with stock that large. First off, that's very hard to find, a board that's wide and that is 5A flamed curly maple. It's just insane how rare that is. And that type of build right there, that would be going on their $10,000 custom shop guitars, $15,000 Robert Benedettos and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that to brag or anything. I'm just saying that, this is a 1/4 of an inch thick, only because, and the only reason I didn't go 3/8 of an inch thick is because our binding is going to end up being right at about 1/4, just slightly over 1/4. If our binding was going to be a solid, full-blown 5/16 of an inch, then I would have made this top even thicker than what it is right now. So with that said, I'm going to set that to the side and talk about the machine work as far as everything that's internal that is now custom in relation to your traditional Explorer, which is over here on the left. Your traditional Explorer obviously gets the pit guard on the front and it hides all these channels. So when you do this channel here, you would have to stop back here because your pit guard stops, and then you would drill through with a 1/2 inch drill bit, a real long drill bit, into the actual cavity. But the cool thing about the way I was able to do all this machine work, I'll just spin it around and you can pause or stop wherever you want, but it's really beautiful. All the engineering behind how everything stopped at a certain location just to allow access into the channel, yet did not hinder, with the ability, in case I forget, to use I always use tall potentiometers. Oh, it probably swelled. Yeah, unfortunately, it swelled up a little bit from just moisture in the air. Let me pause. Okay, I wasn't prepared for this, but I forgot it wasn't moisture in the air. I forgot last night I gave this thing a bath. It pretty heavily saturated with water because it had some scratches in it from where I was doing just building the guitar. So I wet it really saturated and snapped some pictures as well and sent it to Eric. So all that water had gotten there and swollen it up a little bit. Okay, the way I build my guitars is I always leave, regardless of what guitar I build, if it's an SG, a Flying V, Explorer replica, you name it, I always have this area right here, 7/16 of an inch thick finished. So this is about a 1/4 inch thick right now, only because it's receiving roughly a 1/2 inch thick top. Well, it's actually over a 1/4 inch top. So it'll end up being a full 1/2 inch thick right now. And then if I need to machine it off a little bit at the very end of the job, then I'll just take off a 1/64 of an inch. But if you do that, now you can't use your traditional wiring harnesses from guys online because they always build them out of the real short shaft potentiometers. So I may run into a problem once I go over to my push-pull potentiometers, but I'm almost certain I can get a tall shaft push-pull potentiometer. And then if I can, that's awesome. I'll be able to put it right into my guitar. And where I was going with this, even though this is machined right here, it's really beautiful because it still has plenty of platform to support the potentiometer, but plenty of access for your wiring to come in, regardless of whether you position this like this right here. It's irrelevant. And typically the way I build my Explorer replicas is like this right here. Okay, so I've got the bridge, the neck volume, the bridge volume, and then as you can see, this would be fine if it wasn't going to receive a top, but since it's going to receive a top, it has to be taller. And then once I get back to my tone location, I turn the tone potentiometer in that direction right there. That gives me ample space back here to allow a bumblebee, the capacitor. Regardless of what capacitor I do, I've got plenty of open space right there for wiring. If I had have put this in, facing the other direction, it very likely is going to get very congested once I'm trying to connect the capacitor. Okay. I wasn't planning on talking about that, but I'll just wanted to reveal the importance of the way I build my guitars. I left all that solid for tone and strength. Tone and strength, that's our objective. And then obviously because all of our machine work is so precise, then we know that we're going to have a really beautiful little guitar once it's coming together. Okay. And if anything, I'll try to capture that for like the screenshot. Trying to look at the camera back there. That should be a pretty cool screenshot. And this center line here, that center line there, they're perfectly parallel. So from a visual standpoint, should be really cool. It might look a little bit off right now because your eye is picking up on all these other lines, but these two covers are parallel. Now, with that said, don't machine this corner yet, because in the event you hit that corner with something, which you will, it won't be a finished corner, and then you don't have to worry about making repairs. But up here, by doing all of this really precise machine work and engineering first, make certain that you go deep enough that you can just barely catch with the end of the blade right there. And this one's deeper, so you don't have to worry about it. You won't be machining any of this out over here, because that's the whole idea of doing a solid top guitar. But once I glue this down perfectly on center line, and whether I push it forward or push it back, well, I'm definitely going to be working from the center line of this now, and the center line that I defined on the body, which since the body is a three-piece body, when I was doing all this machine work, it was irrelevant where the center line was within a 1/16 of an inch or so, because I knew that it was more important that I got the 81 footprint. But now that I glued this up on center, then now that the center line of my top now has to obviously line up perfectly with the center line of the actual guitar. So, but to keep me from having to re-lay out and re-engineer these pickup locations and all that jazz, by doing my pre-machine work deep enough, all I have to do now, once the top is glued down, is to come in with a Forstner bit, drill out one hole in the middle of each pickup location, then set the depth on my router rate so that it drops all the way down, change over from this 3/8 inch bearing, make sure you don't make that mistake, get yourself in trouble, but change over from that 3/8 inch bearing to a 1/2 inch bearing. Now you can close your eyes, pull the trigger on your router, and allow the actual Mahogany lower to be the template by which you route out your location. Don't make this hole too large, because you'll fall into it and screw up your bit. I made this a 1/4 inch hole so that as soon as this comes around here, it just barely did not allow it to fall in that corner, but then I'll machine out the top, and then my bridge pickup location will be perfectly true based on the central line of the guitar, the central line of the body. See my point here? And then even up here, with all this machine work done up here, even once I glue this up here, I do not have to relocate any of my mortise and tenon work, or I should say the mortise work, or the location here, because the first cut I make will be dropping this bit down deep enough so that the bearing can run up in here. That's so important. Don't do this, you know what, here. Well, you could do that. You could allow the bearing to come in here and just go ahead and machine out the whole top. That's irrelevant. Whoa, what am I saying? Yeah, never mind. If you didn't have your neck pickup location, if you weren't going to have a neck pickup, then obviously you're going to follow as low as you can to make certain you don't fall out. But with this design, I'm wanting to open every bit of that maple up to look identical to what I see there. So if I wanted to, I could run the bearing just like I ran it back here. I could run it high and just allow the bit to come in, cut out here, follow every bit of this path, cut out every bit of this path here, come out here. Now, you would not do that and leave that piece in there because it's going to bind and tear it apart. But you could machine a lot of that out with a Forstner bit, and then simply pull the trigger on your router, close your eyes, and just, you can feel it open up the maple following your lower, which acts as your machining template. Obviously, if the guy changed his mind and said, I changed my mind, I decided I want the traditional pickup and I want to see be able to feed the wiring harness in and out and stuff like that, then you drill through here and then let your router bit run up to that stop point where the pickup, the pick guard would then cover anything that is below it. And before I forget, I'm going to machine this out a little bit, or actually I won't have to machine it. I'm just going to glue in a little Honduran fillet on the top, both of those, because I like the idea of a solid top. But I want to leave this fairly substantial right there, because there's a lot of wires that come from here to go up there, come back, and especially with these two pickups that have 2 conductor wires rather than just a single wire, this channel is going to be pretty much full of wires. Okay. Now, and I'm trying to rush this a little bit. Let's do a little bit of an experiment here. This is similar to what his neck will look like once it goes in, but this may also be a testament to how precise my machine work is, whether it's, And I'm telling you guys, that's not trick camera work. That's the first time I've ever done that. Because this neck is for a hollow body blind limba that I'm building. It might be a little bit different in the depth, but hey man, that's close enough for rockabilly. But also, with that said, I could do one or two things, Eric, on your guitar. I could machine the back of the heel flush with the body, but in this year, it's probably going to fall out. But in this design, the heel actually, oh no, it'll stay in the front. I have to keep reminding myself these videos are for Eric. That's kind of what the design is supposed to look like. So if you want it to, I call that a stepped heel. If you want the stepped heel, it'll be similar to that. Now this heel has not been final shaped, it's just the initial shape. It'll be considerably more narrow in that direction, but that's pretty much the profile on the sides right there. So the 81 would have had the stepped heel, but if you prefer that I bring it up and flush it, and then sand everything, and then we're smoking out the tobacco burst, then I can do that. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful heel when you do that. But it's your call, Eric. Just let me know. I'm indifferent on that. That was cool to see that go in there and be so precise. And that's a testament to my jigs being true. And so you see how I got a lot of work to do on this heel to get it under control, but also keep it true. And I won't talk about how I'm going to do that, but I've got a jig that can guarantee that I keep all that in place. Now, to your traditional guitar, as I mentioned, obviously your channel would be stopping right here. See how I'm solid right there? Basically what I do, you could do one of two things. If this is going to have a pick guard on it where all this is accessible, and you're doing production type work, then all you need is some sort of access from each cavity into this channel so that you can then feed the wires however you can actually reach in there. But with this guitar, it's going to be treated like a solid body guitar. Well, it's like a hollow body guitar where you got to have a means by which you pull those wires through with these. So that's why everything's on a 45-degree angle, so it flows very nicely. But then it's opened up down here so you can reach in and catch the end of the wire and pull it on down into the control cavity. But anyway, that's what you traditionally see. And Ed, in case you're here per what Eric told me about you possibly wanting me to build you a guitar, I built this guitar about, I don't know, a year and a half ago, strung it up, played it acoustically. I never put pickups in it, but I did machine it for it could receive pickups just immediately. But if you're considering doing a single P90 guitar, I can machine every bit of this out and change that and set it up to receive a P90, because see, the scale won't change. But then I would be machining it for P90, either a single P90 or double P90s. Could even machine a custom pick guard based on my templates to receive the work around the P90 surround, which is different, would be really beautiful. Or if you wanted, I could even machine this whole top off, a quarter of an inch, just like Eric's guitar, and I've got enough of this maple, I could actually do a curly maple top and then do P90s or a single P90. Or the sky's the limit. We could do anything you wanted there. So I just want to let you know that I'm a pretty talented guy when it comes to that stuff. And whether you like this guitar, the reason I love this guitar, this is most likely a Brazilian rosewood neck. This is some very, very old pau ferro. But a guy from Brazil chimed in once and he said, I don't know why the hell they call it pau ferro. It's actually harvested in Brazil. So that's most likely Brazilian rosewood. And this guitar sounds unbelievable, and it's beautiful, and that's the flush design. Already set up for your traditional layout. I don't have any money in this guitar other than just all the time building it, so I'd be really fair about finishing this one out for you. Or if you prefer a limba guitar, I have this black limba, which is the same thing, could be remachined and receive the curly maple top, or it could be, set up with, PAFs, whatever, sky's the limit. And again, this one has not received a fretboard, obviously, and same design, flush heel. This thing would sound pretty incredible. This